Welcome, students. Today I'm going to be covering how you should write a thesis statement. If you've already written one, this also covers how you should revise your thesis statement. So this is going to go over some tips and tricks. So first off, is thesis statement, as many of you know, you would probably say is your main point to your paper. But I don't really like calling it a main point because that makes it seem like it's going to be a fact or just anything that you can write about. A better way of framing this is that a thesis statement is your main argument or an assertion. Now, an assertion is sometimes a fact, but in our case, we're actually using the definition that more closely means some type of strong opinion towards a specific belief. So that's really what a thesis statement is. You also need a thesis in order to guide your essay. It is your roadmap. It's telling your reader and also yourself exactly what you're trying to prove in whatever paper or whatever essay you're writing. It's also the most important part of your paper. So you need to know exactly how to write one. So tip number one, your thesis statement needs to be strong, and I'm going to cover what that means. So I like to think of it as kind of being on this spectrum, as you see here on your screen. On one side, you have the weakest type of thesis statement. This is going to be broad. This is going to be lacking specificity. It's going to use vague words. And then on the other side, you have the strongest. Now, this means that your thesis statement might fall in between. Maybe it was the weakest and it was terrible, but then you made it stronger. That's really the goal here. You're not always going to be able to craft a thesis statement that is the strongest, because you could almost always improve on whatever it is you're trying to write. But let me show you some examples here. So here's an example of a thesis statement. Soda is an unhealthy drink. Now take a moment and pause the video and ask yourself, where would you put this on the spectrum? So now that you took a moment to consider where you would put it, you're probably putting that on the weakest side. And you know that intuitively, number one, because it's a pretty small statement, although size doesn't always matter in thesis statements, but it does have a strong correlation. But we know intuitively that this belongs in the weaker side of things. It's not a particularly strong statement at all. Now, what about the second one? Soda is an unhealthy drink and should not be consumed. So go ahead, pause the video again, and try to see where would you put that on this spectrum. So after considering it, you probably put this somewhere in the middle, maybe leaning to strongest, maybe leaning to weakest, depending on how you're thinking about it. Well, how about this next one? The federal government should tax the sale of soda in order to dissuade people from purchasing it because it is unhealthy. Now, most of you are probably automatically going to put this in the strongest side of things. Now, it doesn't mean that it should be all the way to the right. It doesn't mean that it's all the way to the strongest, because you can improve upon this. And as we go through this lesson, you'll see that it does get improved upon. And maybe you have some ideas right now where you can improve upon it. But the point here being, all of these are going to be somewhere on this spectrum. So look at your own thesis statement that you wrote, and where would you classify yours? Is it on the weaker part or is it on the stronger part? And if it's on the weaker part, how can you move it up a notch? How can you kind of put it into the middle? And then once it's in the middle, how can you get it as close as you can to the strongest section? So let's practice a couple of these together. We want to take weak thesis statements and make them stronger, just as you saw in my model for you. So let's work off of this one. Exercise is important. Now, like I said, this is a weak thesis statement. Now, your goal is to take a couple minutes and make this strong. Write it down somewhere. So take a couple minutes, pause the video. When you're ready, when you have a stronger statement written, then go ahead and hit play. So hopefully you were able to improve on this quite a bit. And here's an example of what I came up with in my couple minutes of trying to improve upon this weak thesis statement. So we went from exercise is important to everyone should exercise on a daily basis. So that is probably somewhere around the middle of our spectrum that we have. So compare it to what you have. Maybe you have a stronger one. Maybe yours was still pretty weak. Maybe you struggled with it. So now we have a slightly stronger statement. So go ahead, pause the video again, and in a couple minutes I want you to write down how you would make this second one even stronger. So now that you thought about that second one of everyone should exercise on a daily basis, hopefully you came up with something a little bit more robust. And so here's what I was able to come up with in a few minutes. People should perform at least 30 minutes of moderate exercise a day. So why is that stronger? Well, there's more of an idea here. It is a little bit more specific. We go from everyone should exercise to specifically how long they should exercise, and that it should be not just a daily basis, but that it should be 30 minutes of moderate exercise a day. So that is a bit stronger. So compare it with what you were able to come up with. Is it similar? Where on the spectrum would you place it? So now we're going to try it yet again, another round 4 here. I want you to pause the video, and how would you make this precise statement stronger? So now that you took a couple minutes to do that one, let's look at what I was able to come up with, and you can compare it with your own. Exercising for 30 minutes a day will decrease everyone's mental and physical ailments. So notice it is more on the stronger side of the spectrum. Would I say it's on the strongest end? No, probably not. If we're visualizing that arrow line that I gave you in a previous slide, I'm probably going to put it about a little more than halfway. Because this can be increased even more. This can be made to be even stronger. It can be beefed up. But look at what we were able to do just in a handful of minutes. We went from exercise is important to exercising for 30 minutes a day will decrease everyone's mental and physical ailments. There's definitely more to write about there. It's not as broad as it once was. It eliminates some of the vagueness, and it's a more complex idea. So now it's your turn to try all on your own. Pretend you are writing a paper about social media. I want you to first write a weak thesis statement. Whatever comes to mind first. It could be a few words. It could be a very simple sentence. And then gradually make it stronger. Try that for anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. And you can pause the video now to do so. So here's an example of how I did this exercise where I took this idea of social media, a very broad idea, and I came up with something to write about. So my first weak statement is social media can help people connect. Might be true, probably is true, probably too factual, but now I need to find where is something that I can write about with that? How can I make that stronger? So I went from that to social media helps everyone build necessary relational skills. So now we're also getting a little juicier and we're embracing a little bit more controversy, right? Because a lot of people would probably disagree with this. Not many people would disagree with the first one, that it can help people connect. But that's too weak. Now I'm saying social media helps everyone build necessary relational skills. People are going to argue against that, and that's okay because, again, we want to give an argument and an assertion, not a fact. And so now this is a little bit stronger, and then I went from that statement to social media is now critical in developing children's social and emotional skills and should be incorporated into school curriculums. So notice I have a more specific idea. It is more robust. It's also longer. And so look at the change there, just over a few rounds of this, of going from something that was so simple and so vague to something more specific, to where now I'm talking specifically about children, not just people in general, and I'm talking about how it benefits them, in this case social and emotional skills, and then also how social media must be incorporated into school curriculums. So trick number 1 now, I gave you tip number 1, so this is trick number 1. Write an assertion, not a fact. If you look over your thesis statement and it sounds like something that nobody in their right mind would disagree with, then you are not writing an assertion. And so here, let me give you an example. We had our example of soda. So soda is an unhealthy drink. That is a fact. Who in their right mind is going to tell me otherwise? And so because this is a fact, I don't really have much to write about here. And it's not even interesting. There's no juiciness here. There's no tea that's being spilled. So soda is an unhealthy drink is too much of a fact to be good. But notice we were able to move that into the federal government should tax the sale of soda in order to dissuade people from purchasing it because it is unhealthy. So I still have this idea of it being unhealthy, but now I have something added to it that people are definitely going to disagree with. It's more of a hot take here where people are going to be up in arms if I actually believe this. And I'm going to have some supporters, but I'm also going to have a lot of people that don't like this idea. So this is a statement that is definitely an assertion because it's a belief that I have that I'm stating as a fact, but I'm going to have to prove it through evidence. And it's certainly interesting because people can disagree with me and I will have counter arguments. So that is trick number 1.